All right, so here we are, part two of this ball bounce animation. We have everything set up. I have a basic background stage set up. I've got a ground layer, got a ball path layer, and a ball layer. Even customized the ball a little bit so you can see how certain tools work. Now, let's see. We want to start moving this ball along this path. Now, we're going to do this by using pose to pose and straight ahead animation. There are ways that we'll get to later where you can actually attach this to the path and make it move around. But basics first, so here we go. Um, I'm going to kind of set up my pose to pose now. So I've got the first pose already set, which is here. And it's fine. It's off the stage a bit, but that's okay because sometimes it looks more natural when the animations start off the stage rather than starting on somewhere um, out here. But it's up to you. I'm going to start mine just on the edge here. And what I'm going to do is say this is my beginning point. Now I want to start setting some keys. Where is my end point going to be? It's going to be off the stage over here. And what I'll do is, for right now, set that point on frame 72. So on frame 72, I'm going to say I'm going to insert a keyframe. And so I selected that frame there by itself. I'm going to right click and I can convert to a keyframe here with F6, which is fine. Convert it to a keyframe. I'm now going to move my shape to where I want it. So there. Starts here, ends here. Notice that it holds this position until it gets to that point. What we're going to do now is start to guesstimate where these bounces will take place. So I'm going to start filling in some other poses here. So let's say by about frame 15 or so, I'm going to choose that one frame. Don't just move the slider, choose the frame itself. And I'm going to right click, convert to keyframe, or press F6, and then move the ball where you want it to be. So now it goes from here to here to here, right? If I wanted to zoom further in on my my animation, my frames, I can do that with this slider here. I can really expand it, get really detailed, break it down frame to frame. If I wanted to zoom out, I could do that here. Since we're doing 72 frames, it really doesn't matter a whole lot, but maybe it does. Maybe it's easier to select things. You can also have this slider here and pan back and forth on your animation panel. Now, another thing that's handy, what I'm going to do next is guesstimate. Okay, maybe on frame 30, I'm going to hit F6, move my ball. And this is kind of the rhythm that we get into here. Maybe not quite 15 frames because it's a smaller hop. Maybe right about here, 41 frames. I'm going to hit F6 and move here. So now it's showing me some basic poses where I'm ending up here. So kind of see how that looks. Now there's a lot of space here. This can be adjusted later. I'll get to that in a minute. Now what I'm going to do is fill in some of the gaps, right? And what's going to help me fill in these gaps is knowing where my next animated point is going to be. So if I click on onion skin, this little range pops up here. You can see it better when I pull this out. See, I have a beginning range and I have an end range. I can make it span the whole animation if I wanted to. Now I can see kind of a ghosted image of the different keyframes that I've entered for this object. And so you can see I can slide it around and it will be affected as I move down the line. So now what's good to know is somewhere in between this point and this point, I want to add a frame right about here. F6, move to here. Now I'm going to go here and here. I want to add a frame somewhere in between. Click the frame, F6, and move your object where it needs to be. So I can see now I'm starting to fill in these key poses, which is kind of nice. So same thing here, F6. And same thing here. This is obviously going to be much closer to this side. So I'm going to click here, F6, and move it up. Now, obviously, I don't plan on my animation lasting the full 72 seconds or 72 frames. So if I select this layer here and I see that little white box show up next to my cursor, it means I can take that and drag it. And so I can put it where I want it to be. So I can move it here instead. So now that's a pretty even motion happening there. Good motion, good movement. And now I'm just going to start filling in some of the gaps. Now we have the arcs. We're kind of following an arc already. We took care of that with our path. What I want to do now is take a look at maybe slow in, slow out. And let's work on placing the object in areas where there would be a concentrated number of frames, like towards the top of the arch on each of these bounces. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Let's say up here, I'm going to, on the very next frame, frame 2, I'm going to hit F6, and I'm going to overlap these balls like that. I can go F6 again without even moving to the next frame. It automatically does it and move it here. There's a lot more overlap on the top parts of a slow in, slow out. F6, space it out. So I can see concentrated motion movement happening there. F6, less overlap here. Okay. And this is where editing under timeline is going to be really handy. So I moved one that I put earlier. Now I want it to be this frame actually to be closer in. So I've altered it, because this is going to end up being a frame by frame animation. And so I've moved it. There we go. After this frame, what's going to happen is it's going to start to squash or stretch and squash later. So I'm going to leave these frames alone. And I'm going to go and work on the motions that are going to be easy for me. So I know that right before this pose, here for instance, I'm going to press F6 and move the ball up here. So I'm kind of working backwards in a way, but something like that. Okay, this is a smaller arch. So here, that looks good, but I'm going to hit F6 and move the ball so it's overlapping a lot on the top of the arch. Oops. The mistake here I made was this whole section right here was selected, which I did not want. I'm going to select the next frame, hit F6, and move my object again. A little bit less there. So I'm working in my slow in and out on the arcs here. So here I am on this frame. I'm going to set the one before it by hitting F6 and move that object here. Set the one after it, F6, move the ball here. I could probably do one more on each side. I'll do F6 and move it like that. A little bit less overlap, and maybe one before it. Select the frame, F6, and like that. So I'm getting some good motions and movements happening. So from here, let's say I will do the next frame. So I'm here at my arch. I'm going to do F6, put the ball here. I'll do one on the after or the before side, F6, and so on. So I've got some arcs happening. This looks good. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some practice organizing these. Now I've got some major gaps happening here, which is fine because all of this can be moved later. But I want to fine tune my ball motion first before I do that. So I can preview this by playing it here on my timeline. It's kind of choppy sometimes. It might take it a couple times. You can hit the loop until it's a loop, but it's only going to loop based on this range. So you have to extend this out. Now I can tell it to play. And it's kind of choppy, right? Because it's not fully animated yet. But I'm really looking at the motions on the top of the arcs for now. Another way that you can preview this is hit Control Enter. And it gives you more of a movie view of the project without all the clutter of what's behind your stage. So this looks good. And I'm going to call this, for right now, we're going to get into next video is going to be editing our frames. I'm going to turn off my looping here. We'll get into editing our frames and placement of our frames, as well as getting into some squashing and stretching of your objects. So that's all for now, and we'll see you next time.